Yakayok sa tini, Katakyuhan. Yakana, Kwasyatak away haye jini, Kwachakutatsu, Kakatunik, Singit Kinach, Aka away, Kaitha Kinach, Ade Hatuati. Ya away, Shukwa ai, Ya Aitha, Ya Guksa Yeti, Kagudesa, Gukwati. Gwash Witayachiti, Hekwasaku Wasakachtusa. Location and direction.
Apologies.
Ishwasa. First of all, so great to see everybody. We're going to do two things tonight, I thought. We'll keep translating our Yesh Chachan Shkashnik, keep sort of working on this collectively, moving through the story, learning the story, practicing the act of translating from Tlingit to English. So with your letter writing, that was probably a lot of English to Tlingit. Now we turn the boat around, go the other direction. Sometimes like paddling upstream. And then we'll do location and direction. But I guess I got two questions for you all first. Do you have any thoughts or things, your language things you're thinking about? Questions?
I have a question on how you respond to, when someone says Ixchan. When I say it to my Nana, she says Chatsu, and I don't know why, just thinking from English, I would have thought it would be Wa'etsu. Which one is it?
I think a lot of things are like that, where you would say you too, but since the subject, I think same with, there's quite a few things that would go chatsu, because you'd say yak'e satini. And I think that's another one where you'd probably say chatsu yak'e satini. So the chatsu part is saying, I also feel that way. Instead of like, because if someone says ichsachan, the verb is kind of focused on them loving you. So then I would probably say chatsu ichsachan. I love you. So it seems like that's a really good word order for Tlingit. And if someone says yak'eich satini, oh chatsu yak'eich satini. So the chatsu part isn't necessarily tying yourself to that verb, but just saying, I also feel this way, and then you often repeat the verb. But I think you could also just say chatsu in a lot of those instances, which is really interesting. And we're going to find a whole bunch of stuff like that, I think, where we would guess it would go one way, but it actually goes another way. And so when we look at su and we look at ku'ah, ku'ah is another one. I think a lot of people like to just substitute it just for like the word but or however in English, but it doesn't quite work that way. So usually it's going to sort of follow something. So you could say, um, let's see. Let's say I was trying to tell you something. It says, I went this way, but this other person, they went that way. So right. So in English, I'd say I went this way, but this other person went that way. Right? They went that way. But in Tlingit, I'd say khat ayah. Let's say I'm gonna go to. I'll just say ade khat qa'a. Let's say it's a hit, a house. Khat ayah hit de chwagud hu qa'a wait de wugud. So you say hu qa'a. Name them and then say qa'a instead of just saying khat ayah hit de chwagud qa'a hu. So that's sort of using an English word order. So that's another one I think that folks can just sort of practice using. The ku'ah usually follows who we're talking about if there's some other thing. Good question. Anything else?
So when we say wasayati and you know, okay, wa equa, that's like and you, right? Or
Yep.
right?
So
Okay.
that wa'eq'a, it just turns whatever the question was or whatever. Like it
Oh,
might even be like, how are you? Let's say we go to the Tlingit restaurant. They got all kinds of delicious stuff. And then, and the person walks up. Dasai tawasaku yichahi. Oh, khataya nai diach tawasaku. Then I might turn to my friend and say, wa equa. And that's just saying, whatever the thing is, how about you? So that qua just really shifts the focus to a different subject. A lot of times, that's what it does. If you said cha'an qua, that's a real hard turn. So that might be something like, maybe someone would say, achit yanuaha, cha'an qua teshdana achji. I'm really hungry, but I got no food. So that's one that could do a pretty hard turn, cha'an or cha'an qua. Anything else?
If you talk, or
What's
Dave,
that?
cha'an, is that one or two words?
2 words, cha'an. Good question. And it doesn't have to have qua, cha'an qua, or just cha'an. Okay, okay. Goodness, sheesh. I think next week we'll do some adverbs and adjectives. That'll be a nice little twist into the stuff that we do. So, second question I've got. What do you want to do first? Translate or do more location stuff?
I'd love to do more location stuff if other people are on board for that.
Okay. So when we look at that thing like that box, it's important to note that you don't have to learn that whole box all at once. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just focus on this little kanatsak. So if you're from the coast, you would say kanatsak. And go ahead and say it. Kanatsak.
Kanafak,
Kanatsak. Kanatsak. If you're from the interior, you'll probably say kashak, kashak, kashak. Same thing. This little thing right here. So this we'll say kashak, but when you go to repeat it, feel free to adjust it if you want to honor your own dialect. So the kashak is going to help us with some of these terms. And so is this thing. Everybody say nadak, 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 nadak. This presents two things. So now these two things can be in relation to each other. For example, nadak shakabu wekanatsak. Nadak shakabu wekanatsak. Nadak shakabu. Okay, so we've got a number of different things here. One, is there a verb here? No, so no verb, don't need a verb for this sentence. All we're saying is table in front of is at that squirrel. That's how it all translates. Word order is always important. It's really important in Tlingit. If you said kanatsak shakabu we nadak, it sounds like you'd say, okay, now for some reason the kanatsak is kind of the focus now. It could work. So one is in blue is shukah. So shukah as a word means in front of or ahead of something. That could be talking about location or time. So let's say, like today, maybe, it's on the record, so I'll say, Guaxie gao HK Khatbuti Khatbuguti. I was late getting here. And if I saw a student, I say, ach shukat hat iyagut. You got here before I did. Ach shukat hat iyagut. You arrived before I did. You could also say, hashukatewugud. They went ahead of us. It doesn't necessarily mean anything more than just a direction. However, if you say ha-shuka, that's usually our ancestors. Ha-shuka, hus is sometimes you're referring to our elders. So sometimes it is sort of a larger sort of philosophical concept. So sometimes you're talking about that. Ha-shuka. Has-tu-shuka aweh. I've also heard this used sometimes to describe the crest of a clan, but I've always been a little murky on how that really works in the language. So that is a base, needs a noun to belong to, in this case, nadak, and then w. So that is the suffix, and there shouldn't be a verb there. It just means is at. So you could say shukabu. It is in front of that thing. So if I wanted to say, I'm going to pick two different verbs here. I'm going to say yak, cheech. What is yak and cheech in English?
Boat and
Porpoise.
Porpoise.
Boat and porpoise. So someone tell me the porpoise is in front of the boat. Using this same, we're only going to change the nouns here.
Yak shukawu cheech. Or cheech, is it a high tone?
Low.
Low, cheech.
You need to remember, one time I was teaching it and I said cheech. And someone said, oh, like Cheech and Chong. I said, no, that was a high tone. Which is a great. Okay. Okay. So then the we, you can have the we in there. It just gives a little bit of separation. It's not like you need it. So yak shukabu we cheech.
Hune, I have a question about shuka, and
Ah,
I froze up there for a little bit. So it's interesting to me that it could refer to like history, ancestors which are in the past, but it means ahead in front.
yeah. So in English, the future is in front of you and the past is behind you. Like there's a whole bunch of like idioms that will, you can't look back. You just gotta go ahead, right? And that's a pretty foundational concept, I think, in English. In Tlingit, it's not always as clear, but the ancestors are in front of us because they've cleared the trail. And the descendants are behind us because, you know, there's a bunch of things that cue us into this. Like there's these phrases we'll hear, we'll say, we've begun to walk, we begin to follow them, our ancestors. We were talking in class last night about there's a couple of things that sometimes get to be so respectful, so much respect is given to them that we don't use their names. One of them, anybody know what, I'm thinking of two of them. Anybody want to guess what the two things are?
Brown bear.
Brown bear. We call it Yatsinades, a living thing. We could say hoots. If you're out in the woods, say Yatsinade, or just say hus. Don't say their name out in the woods. They'll come. They'll be like, yeah, and we don't want that. We don't want them to come around us. And it's not that we don't like them, but we just give them so much respect. They're so powerful. What do you think the other one is?
Land otter people.
That's a pretty good one.
Shaman.
What's that?
Shaman.
Oh, a shaman. Yeah, probably for both of those would be pretty big things, like in terms of how and when we talk about them. And I think both of those are great examples, like the kushta. And so, like we saw one on the beach the other day. We were out looking for a deer, and we saw naski a kushta wutusatin ni chaya yasna at khataya kaidihinaya ditataya akhulqain kasuk qa kasaktu ashkutu khasatini ya akhuni akhwu sastuina ke yuqiwatan hoqa like قال حس خستين يا أخوكا بنشيش يخستيني جادي هانايو كلها تواشكو هدايي تي كلها تواشكو هاي سنيخي Ye awa. Kasha na say a itch. Nietzsche Chaya Yehavuti. Ya Aas Ḳwáani. Ha, Yisitinga. Heshkadeen Aya Koa. Kawaach. Kashkadeen a Kawaach. Ichwaji. Ka awe Hachande Wugud. Ki awe Achwak. Chuoya Ek Aya Chwasatin. Kachkachati Kudas Yehasawa U. Ya Aas Ḳwáani. Akhani. Akhwawus. Kayekake Yahakakwati. Du Iqa. Huqa. Hoots away. Manachsea. How? Qanachawe qa yachdutin akhwaq shiyig. So I'll sidetrack a little bit with this short narrative. So this happened last weekend. We went out looking for a friend that we can go say hello to out in the woods and bring home with us. And we went pretty early in the morning, like real early. By the time we got over to Ḥutsnuwu, we were sort of combing the beach. There's this phrase, "Yachyanakuk," means to go in the water and follow the shoreline. Sometimes you do that looking for something you can get. And we saw these three landowners, a mother and their two babies. I was like, hey, look at that. And I looked at them once, but I didn't look back once I saw what they were. And we kind of were cruising along, and I asked a friend of mine, I said, did you talk to them? And he said, no. I said, oh. I usually talk to them. I say, sorry. I don't want to see you again. So there's respectful ways to talk about some of this stuff. Because, and I could say, I don't want you to come take us. Because they come and take people sometimes. And what was really interesting, I haven't talked about this a whole lot since it happened. We dropped some people off at one spot, and then we went around. And they're going to go pick some low bush cranberries. And we're going to go look for our friend with the horns, the antlers. And so we pull around, and the boat was getting kind of blown around in the wind. And yeah, I'll put living thing in the chat. And we came around, it was a little too windy, so we said, we'll go around. This one friend of ours, he said, there's a little harbor right over there. Just pull around, it's not as windy. So we pulled around there, got out, anchored the boat. And then there was another boat full of people that was going to go down a little bit farther. We're going to just check out these just various spots, see if anybody sees anything. And my Connie, my in-law, he pointed, he said something, but I didn't quite hear him. But I looked down and I saw someone walking towards us with a yellow shirt on, or a jacket. I saw it. So then I was just kind of standing there. But then it looks like he was going to go into the woods. And I said, are we going to wait here for them to come over here? And he said, it's a bear. I said, oh, okay, yeah, we're not going to wait. Then we'll just go on. But in my eyes, it sure looked like a person. That makes me think about that stuff. But the other thing we give an awful lot of respect for is our ancestors. If you look at a whole bunch of ways that they refer to them, it's usually just hus. They'll just say that a whole bunch of times. Sometimes they'll name them once. Hashuka, Hashagun. Hashishko Hus is the most common way I think they're referred to, just our grandparents. But then they'll use hus for a whole bunch of other things. Yetzinate is a living thing. That's the other word for a bear.
Question, just one of the phrases from your story, I think you said, Nichaya Nahawuti. So this beach, I don't know if you could help me translate that, or maybe someone in the class. I was trying to pick out something when you speak in Tlingit, and I was like, the one phrase I could write down.
Nichaya Yehawuti.
Oh, it's Yehawuti.
Probably. And there might have been you say it this way too. What is that? Anybody know? Oops, I forgot the yay the second time. What's the niche part?
Beach.
The beach. That's the beach. What's the yeyati or yehayati, yeha? Well, wuti is the perfective form of yati. So yati is now, wuti is perfective.
It was. I'm looking at my notes. I have a yahuti. Is it was like?
Yeah,
So-
yahuti it was like, wuti it was, to be
Oh,
a
it was.
yay wuti, and then if you usually have a place right before it, it was at that place. And then when you add ha, we were at that place. We were on the beach.
We
Beach,
were on
yehawuti, or
she.
yehawuti. And chish. Okay. So this little kind of talk is going to go to some different places. Just to just give us examples of how this stuff works. So one, like get some of the larger concepts. Two, start to look at the word order and how they start to get put together. Three, start looking at some lists and give you some lists to go study. And then we're going to go into the stories and we'll just keep an eye out for these things. I think the next story we'll do after Ḥukaháa is going to be Ṭaqa. So I took Ṭaqa and I tried to color code all the different types of words that are in there. So we'll dive into that a little bit as well. Okay. So now, oops, let me fix one thing. I'll grab this color. Okay. So before let's just read it first. Nadak egu wekanatsak.
Dark. A group with kind of
Nadak egu wekanatsak.
dark.
Nadak egu wekanach.
So what changed? All right, let me pull this. Look up something in the dictionary while you folks explain to me what changed from the last sentence.
There's no w.
There's no wa. What's that?
It's become
Yes, it's become I gotta fix the tone. I messed up on the tone. All right, folks. I get this one wrong all the time. I don't know why. So we go back. Shuka switches to take when you put. So this is w if it goes on to a vowel, but it's when it goes on to a consonant. That's why we write it as w or If you put a vowel suffix onto the end of certain words, they will change. The K will always change to a G. Right? So then you got that. It goes from take, egu. Let's try it again. Nadak, egu. We cannot talk.
dark. Egu with kind of
So here, no verb. We're saying the squirrel is behind the table. Shukawu, egu. Shukawu, egu. Okay.
I can't remember. I remember you explained it yesterday. What's the difference between the long dash and the short dash again with these relational terms?
So the long dash means it needs to belong to a separate word. It follows a separate word. Nadak, egu. If you're not gonna put any noun there, there has to be a. A will just pop up there. So you could say it in other ways too. Like you could say, we nadak, a egu away. Kanatsak. You could say it that way too. A egu behind it. So this long dash means there needs to be a separate word right before it, and that's the thing that it's behind. And then the hyphen means it's a suffix and it attaches directly to another word. So this can attach to a noun, like you could say, Neisha, Skunu. You could say that. Or you could say Egu. It's behind it. Okay, Geesh. Oh yeah, the Aas Ḳwáani. We forgot that one too. Man, we do all kinds of catch up. We'll start looking at that one today too. And Geesh for the reminder. Okay, let's see where he goes now. Nadak kabu we kanat ak.
Dark Pau with kind of up.
Nadak kabu we kanat ak.
Dark Pau with kind of up.
So here's ka, right? Kabu. It is on the table. That's a very short, sometimes you don't need a verb. Gusu achkatichayi. Where are my keys? Nadak kabu. Done. Right? You don't need to have a verb. Not all the time. And in this case, and for this kanal tzakis, it's kind of frozen right now. So it's not going to be running. If it's running around, then we probably wouldn't have kabu. You could say nadak kach neshich. It's running all over the table. Okay. So we went shaka, ek, ka, adding w to all of them, or shakabu, egu, kabu. Where's it gonna go now? Nadak tayi w with kanatsak.
Dark Taiwu with kind of up.
Nadak tayi w with kanatsak.
Dark Taiwu with kind of up.
So again, if it ends with a vowel, you're gonna have w. If it ends with a consonant, you're gonna have No matter what, it will be opposite of the tone before it. Ahwu, egu, ahwu, iwu. Right, it's just going to follow. Those are the rules of the Tlingit suffix. It has this opposite tone thing with the open suffix. Tayi, oh, go ahead.
Does Tai ever appear in that form, or is it always followed by a whoop?
No, you could just say tayi. So you could say nadak tayi. And then that's just saying underneath the table. Te. It's built into a few nouns, I think, as well. Tayi, tayi, that's it. Or no, I don't think it's in there. Okay. Where's it gonna go now? So now we'll introduce a verb and see how these things change a little bit. You can't have so you can't say yadu, we do, hey do, you do, neitlu, skunu, awu. Can't use that one with a verb. You can use the T one to arrive at, to be moving around at. So in this case, nadak khant hun with kanatsak.
Dark Hun with kind of up.
Nadak khant hun with kanatsak.
Dark
Thou hunt hun with kanatsak.
So now we've got hun and the T, khant. Khant is used quite, it means like to just arrive right next to. Hun is a verb for a single person to be standing somewhere. Wek hun, they're standing right there. Yuk hun, they're standing way over there. Akhant hun, they're standing right next to me. Nadak khant hun, they're standing right next to the table. I khant hun, they're standing next to you. All right. Is that the same color? Let's check something real quick. I think so. Okay, change color there. Oops. All right. So now, where do you
Sorry,
think?
Ḳwáani.
Oh,
So a relational base can be a verb. No.
no, but it can be included in a verb phrase.
So it says relational base. Oh, wait, but you're saying,
Verb right here, hun.
oh, hun. Okay,
You could
sorry.
see that without any of this stuff. So you could say, Akhta hun, my mother is standing. You could just say it just like that. It doesn't need to be located somewhere. Yeah, so here you have noun, relational base, suffix, verb, determiner, noun. So that's how all the different parts are working. Nadab, khant, han, way, kanat, The other thing to remember with these, if you're going to start using pronouns, they work differently. I think in English, you're using kind of object pronouns, right? Next to me, next to him, next to them. You're going to use possessive pronouns in Tlingit. My next to, your next to, our next to. So how would I say the dog is standing? Well, I guess would a dog stand? Why not? It's a standing dog. Sometimes my dog will stand up. If I hold a piece of food, she'll stand up for a long time. The dog is standing next to us.
Would be Kate, hunt, hun.
And what we have, if we have Kate, Hunt, Hun, that works, but now it's standing next to the dog. So we could
Oh,
here we
okay.
could say Weqa, the person standing next to the dog. But you say Qa Hunt Hun Kate, the dog is standing next to the person.
Would you use has, hunt, hun,
You could say Hus do.
has do?
So it's got to be the possessive one. As we go back to our lists of pronouns, it's got to, just like my mom, my arm, my cup, your, it's going to be that one, which is a logical shift for us sometimes. Like, I'm not used to that. But if you want to practice, you could just switch your English, right? Just say my beside. And people will be like, what? What do you mean your beside? My beside standing. My beside he stand. So, but in this case, if we want to say, let's just have a heron standing next to us, just so we could be cool. Just to show you, like you could start to manipulate these, you could start to change them. But it's going to challenge your English brain in terms of like how the words are supposed to be ordered. The noun it belongs, it's relating to. That's what we call it relational. Then the relational base, then maybe the suffix, right? And then in this case, the verb. And just the weh is just saying that. Shak, that heron. We must be really calm and still because they would fly away all the time. Okay. Okay.
So the hun, that's the stand part. Sorry, I missed that part.
It's a single person to stand or thing. And you hear there's a different verb that's totally related, which has to do with the active standing, which is why you say giddahan for one person to stand up, giddahan. But this is a different, it just means to be positioned somewhere. Hun, you're just standing. So like if someone were to ask you, what are you doing? Hun, I'm standing. I don't know. Okay, good observations. Oops. Don't help me with anything. Computer was pushed the wrong button. Okay. So we're gonna try a different verb. We're gonna try to go. We're gonna send this little kanal talk. It's been just sitting too long. It's like I need to go. I'm a kanal talk. Related to the kanal talk, there's this thing called hechwa. Hechwa is kind of the opposite of hiu in Tlingit. And it's not used very often anymore. I don't think it's a bad thing. Hechwa, anybody know what hechwa is? Anybody can tell me what hechwa is?
Magic.
It's magic, right? But what is like this Tlingit term of this Tlingit concept? Anybody know of any examples of hechwa?
I know Children of the Taku, one of their stories, it talks about Tuch, Hechwa, and Nauxiti, and how there was no black magic before Nauxiti. And that's how it was the story of the chickadee and how the chickadee was the first Nauxiti.
Sheesh. Another term for like black magic or harmful magic is hiu. H, high tone E, E, X, W. There were some people who came among us and they didn't want us to talk about this stuff anymore. But hiu is that's the bad stuff. There's all kinds, could involve like taking people's hair and doing stuff with it if you know what you're doing. All kind like there's all kinds of stuff that used to happen. People could spread a seal skin out on the ground and pin it tight, stab it with a dagger, and kill somebody. So that's hiu, where you're using this sort of spiritual energy or power to harm somebody. Hechwa is usually using that spiritual power to help somebody. So another example I've heard of hechwa is sometimes when a baby was born, they used to tie tsusani, the pine cones, around its hands. So you're going to be real industrious. You're going to have fast hands like a kanatzak. They got like they got like real swift hands. And so you want someone to be like industrious and crafty. You would do that to their hands when they're little. But sometimes the hechwa goes too far. So one elder said, like she was telling me about her first husband, she said when he was little, he got real sick and they used hechwa to pull him out of it. But they used too much and he turned mean. He turned real mean after that. So anyways, I can't exactly remember why I thought of that. But, I guess because we got a Kanatzak here. So the Kanatzak needs to go. He was just there, or it was just there. I don't know why I always want to say he, too. And then it was standing. Now it's time to go. So here we're not going to use a relational base. We're just going to jump right to the suffix. Throw this suffix right on a noun, going towards the noun. Then we got another pattern. The pattern here is noun towards yanagut way noun. So nadakte yanagut way kanatzak.
Nadakte yanagut way kanatzak.
Nadakte yanagut way kanatzak.
Nadakte yanagut way kanatzak.
The kanatzak is going to the table. So how could I say the cat is walking towards the tree?
Stay yanakut way douche.
Stay yanagut way douche. How about the moose is walking towards the tree? Or wait, I did tree. I said tree. How about the totem pole?
Kutia de yanagut we ziusk.
So see, now we've got a pattern, right? So the day, and then this day, because it's open, it will be, so we're going to go nadak day, as day, kutia day. Right, so this is just how this one's going to work. It'll be the opposite of the tone that's before it. Then we got the yanagut. Once we learn other verbs, we could plug them into here. Nadak de yanashich we kanatzak. It's running. The squirrel is running. The kanatzak is running to the table. I could say nadak de yanashken we kanatzak. Anybody know that one? Yanashken. it is jumping towards the table. So, you know, there's like just these multiple fill in the blank things here. Our focus now, though, is day. No matter what we change right here, the day part means going towards. Day, day, day. Hit day and a good we cannot talk. A Sunday and a good we cannot talk. The squirrel's coming right at me. So another thing, so we kind of talked about these, that you're gonna be using ach, I, du, ha, ye, hastu, right? So we looked at these long time ago, but just in terms of like picking the right pronoun is a big part of Tlingit, especially as we keep showing you more and more parts, and you just got to say, okay, it's real easy to get them kind of mixed up, and then the khan is a really important one. So we could have all of these. We say ach khan, near me. I khan, near you. Du khan, ha khan, yi khan, hastu khan. So this kanatzak it'd be coming right at us. And so you'd say achande yanagut we kanatzak. Ichande yanagut we kanatzak. Du chande yanagut we kanatzak. Ha chande yanagut we kanatzak. Yi chande yanagut we kanatzak. Hastu chande yanagut we kanatzak. But just in terms of like, it's almost like there's a wheel there and you could turn the wheel and there's different things on the wheel. And that's how you sort of start moving this stuff around.
ख़wáani, how would you say it if it was like I was walking toward them? So you would then be using a subject pronoun and then using the possessive as the next to the object pronoun, correct?
Yeah, so if we're using a singular them, we'll just get ourselves to there. So here's the first part. Okay. So dukhande, and now if you say yanagut, they are walking towards them, right? Those are both third person. So what do you think might change here? What do I got to add, or what do I got to shift?
Yeah, khanagut. No.
Yan Chagat.
Not
Yon Chagat.
yeah.
Yep, we are on track, right? So in terms of what we're looking at here, this part does get a little bit tricky. But we just got to remember the order that things go in. Here's the root, here's the classifier. Because we're not going to change the verb, we're going to still say ya nagut. That part's going to be there. Ya plus na plus a zero classifier means it's in the process of happening. You need to have those three things. Those will not change. So that means this must be the subject. That's what we could change. So yeah, if I heard you folks saying it, if I'm going to change it to me or I, in this case, it's going to be cha. And then what's going to happen is if you have ya plus na plus cha, even though the ya is a separate word, it's going to affect it because it ends with a vowel. So something's got to give. And what's going to give is the a and the na. So you're going to get dukhande yan chagut. I'm heading right at them. Or it doesn't really mean that. It just means I'm going to see them, I'm going to visit them. But for people, whenever you have the day or dach or the ti, you need to have something to attach it to. Because you can't say do day. You just cannot say that. Ach day, you cannot. So you got to have khan. Khan works really well for motion verbs. It means usually most people will interpret it as like I'm going to go see them. I'm going to go visit them. I'm going to see them. I'm going to visit them. It literally means I'm going to be next to them. I'm going to this area beside them. Good questions.
I just want to say that I only really know this one suffix de because hinde yiduasak ach ish.
Okay, to the water. Yeah, away. And that's another fun one. So a related concept we're going to get to is these sort of big global concepts. Because when you say hinde, it literally means towards the water. Most people are going to think to the ocean. That's just like, for inland folks, it might be a little different. They might think of it as to the lake, but yeah. Okay. So then it gets there, and it's going to leave. There's only one thing that changes here. We'll change one single thing, day to dach. Now that kanatzak is getting away from that table. Nadak dach ya nagut we kanatzak.
Dak, dak, yanagut, wekanas, ak,
Nadak dach ya nagut we kanatzak.
dak, dak, yanagut, wekanas, ak.
Let's do this similar sort of drill. So we're going to sort of, let's say, what are we going to do? What else can yanagut? How about the woman is walking away from the house?
Hiddach yanagut we shawat.
Okay. Hittach yanagut we shawat ye away. So we see like just continuing to recognize these patterns and paying special attention to this. Because if we said day, now she's going towards the house. Day dach, day dach. And then these things could change, right? So you could say, oh, in that case you'd say that. Or you probably say this. So you got to throw the chan in there. Achandach yanagut we shawat. She's walking away from me. There's nothing like really implied there. It just means she was here and she, because it doesn't mean like she left me or anything like that. It just means she's walking away from me. Okay.
Speaking of like special meanings to things, there's the phrase that we use that I've heard in English when people pass on that we say they walked into the forest, but would it not be the same forest Aas Ḳwáani? That wouldn't be what you would use, right?
Yeah, you would usually say, and then Yanagut is right now. So we're going to say, there's two ways. Or we'll just say ha. Let me go back and see. This is the color I was using. So this one, I can figure out what color I'm going to use. This one actually isn't a base. So these are the two ways I've heard it said in Tlingit. I've heard some people say like we didn't say that, but I've heard speakers say that. So you could say dakte wugud, which literally means they went up into the inland. They went up into, this could also mean to the forests, because dak is from, and we're going to look at this one, from the ocean up to the inland. It's a direction which is away from the ocean. Dakte wugud, that is a code for they passed away. You could also say hanak wugud. So you could say, like, if you say this, like, achandach yanagut, they're walking away from beside me. It doesn't have particular heavy meaning there. Like, there's no big breakup or drama. But there could be some drama with this one. Because this nak, it's a relational noun, which just means you can't put a suffix on there. But it means to leave something behind. Suhe de shugach tutana. Suhe de shugach tutan ya kuske da ke hajik anak. Haskaudik anak haskaudik. They died off and left it behind. Like that's literally in that song. It was in the speech and it's in the song. So hanakhugut would be they left us behind. Most cultures, when they're talking about death, they have a whole mess of ways to talk about it because it's a really heavy thing. In Tlingit, I've also heard this, which was wild. So the verb here has to do with throwing something, but kutkhwakik means I lost it. Literally, it means I threw it and it got lost. But this is used to say like, I should remember that, but for some reason I can't. But when I heard a speaker say Ḳukaháa, she was talking, oops, I misspelled that. She was talking about she just lost her husband. He had just died. And that's how she said it there too. And this real sensitive stuff, we want to be real careful with these things and just definitely say, dear universe, we don't want this kind of stuff around, but we also need to know how to talk about it when it happens. And this is how we talk about it in the language, is we have these ways to code things. And it's related to these things that we're looking at. Here's day, here's nak. Kut is a little bit different than those two, but it kind of isn't. I don't know if we didn't really do that one yet, but we'll do it a little bit later. Okay. Anything else? Do one more table thing. And then we'll do a couple more pictures, take a break, move back to our translation. Oh, yeah, oh, what? Oh, walked into the woods. Yeah, oh, my. Sheesh.
I think that was not uncommon in pre-modern cultures.
Yeah, I mean, what?
Pre-modern, I mean, like 100 years ago.
Right. Well, even in English, you usually say passed away or we lost them, as opposed to, sometimes you'll say die. But if it's someone really close to you, more commonly you'd use something a little softer. It's really interesting. Okay, now the squirrel's got to run. He's like, this conversation's too heavy. I got to run around this tape. Okay. Nadak da ya nashich wikanatsak.
Dak da ya na shik we kanats ak.
Nadak da ya nashich wikanatsak.
Dak da ya na shik we kanats ak.
So there's da, like to go, or this could be dach, like if it just keeps running in circles. So that's kind of just starting to look at how this stuff works. And I got these illustration ideas from Kyle Worrell, who was teaching this to folks and was starting to make these pictures. So let's do a little bit of suffix matching here. We got a kach, we got a kuk. Okay? We got an apple and a box. If the question is guch sa yeyeti, there's a verb there. Guch sa yeyeti. Where is the apple? Guch sa yeyeti. That's what we're asking. Here's some answers. So you see where it is right here? Box is closed, sitting on top of it. I would say Everybody try that one. If it's under the box,
Huk tayik
Uktaik yeyati wekak.
if it's in front of it, I guess I should have turned the box. I don't know. I should have put it right here. Anyways, maybe we're standing over here. Who knows? Huk shukak yeyati wekak.
huk kak yeyati.
Ukshukach yeyati wekak.
Now it's behind it. I think that should be hot. I'm gonna have to look at this one closer. I think that should be high tone. Huk take yeyati wekak.
Huk take yeyati.
And let's see, I might have to make this a little smaller. Okay. So if the box is closed, it must be closed to use this one. You cannot have an open top. It must be closed. But if it's closed, now the apple is inside the box.
Hook, two, uh,
And if it's just beside it, hook, takka. Now, if it's in between two boxes, notice we don't have to pluralize the boxes here.
hook, yeah, TV, hook, yeah, TV,
And now if the box is open and it's in the box, it's ka. It's not tu, it's not yik, it's ka. So in this case, hook, kuk, tiwik, So not every one of these, but because the question has gu with that suffix, we're going to match it for most of them. Kuk, tayik, shukuk, teik, tuch, takka. Doesn't need a suffix for that one. Ak doesn't need a suffix for that one. Kuk. Okay?
On top and inside are similar.
They are the exact same. That's just how Tlingit deals. That's just how Tlingit is.
So how would you know you need that?
That's it's there unless the base doesn't really allow. You can't really put you can't really put it on there. And takka, I think you could put it on, but takka is really a combination of tak and ka. So I don't think it wants it to be on there either.
But isn't that like, so is it saying residing, isn't it residing in or residing next to, residing between, I mean, residing inside of, residing besides, or
Yeah, residing or resting or just sort of being, staying. So yeah, and so that's, but because it's asking gu sa, we try to match it, but then a couple of them, takka and kak, they kind of reject the suffix. And sometimes this suffix is also just disappears. This particular one sometimes disappears.
Do they reject all the suffixes? Does it reject the t as well, or just the k?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, because, and I was working with speakers with this. I was like, okay, all right. So that some of them, and these are like real fine tuning stuff, right? Because I think if you said tuk, I think it's probably fine. I don't think that one would fit, but this one does. So good questions that I don't have all the answers to. So if we ask a different question, gusu, that's a verbless phrase. Gusu, there's no verb there. So now that we're going to give verbless answers. So we see all of these ending with wake og. So we'll just kind of skip that part. We'll just stick with the box and the relational terms. Hook kawu,
hook, cow,
hook tayibu,
hook,
hook shukawu,
hook,
hook tewu,
hook,
hook tuwu,
hook,
hook takkawu, hook agu,
hook,
hook kawu.
hook, cow,
I only got two more. And they're going to involve, I think, moving around. Or maybe the first one's standing. So now we're going to see, I'm going to have to check the other one. I bet you I can put the suffixes on those. I have to check this with the speaker. I'll have some speakers look at this and double check. Especially for those first two. I have a feeling, but this is the one suffix that can disappear. It's more likely to disappear than the others. Okay, so now we have the arriving at. So if the question is gut sa han sisk, where is the owl standing? So let's just practice the verb, and then we're actually going to just stick with just the relational portion. So we'll say han sisk,
Han, sis,
han sisk,
Han, wait, this
kuk kat,
Tuk cut,
kuk tayit,
Tuk
Yi,
kuk shukat,
cut,
kuk egg,
Cook, egg,
kuk toot,
cook, toot,
kuk oct, kuk oct,
cook, cut,
kuk cut.
cook, cut,
Now it's got to fly around. Guchsa yandakin sisk. So now we're getting the underline X, which means to be at, moving around, or repeatedly coming back to, or in prolonged contact with. So the verb is yandakin sisk.
Yandakin,
kin, wait, sis,
So yandakin is for a single thing to fly. I was just driving down Yandakin Drive not too long ago. Well, I was late. I had to go to the airport. So now it's going to be a little different though, because it's going to go over it. So we're going to have Tuk-kanach.
Tuk kanach,
cook, kanak,
Kanach.
kanak,
Kanach. This could be going over and not touching it, but this could also be going, well, like walking over a mountain or a hill. It could be stepping over something. You'd have to do a little bit more work outside of that phrase itself to sort of specify those things. Kuk tayich.
Tuk
Yi,
Yanach.
Tuk yanach,
This yanach is going by the face of it. This would work for like you're driving past the store. Hundaka hitti yanach yanikuch. And I already told you I need to go to the store. Hundaka hitti yanach yanikuch. Kuch de not the kuch. Turn it around. Or go back actually. Kuk teich.
egg,
Kuk tunach.
nach,
And so a couple things, when you put nach on these in combination, sometimes you're going to have some options. They're going to do some funky things with the vowels. Kanach can go just short and low for both of them. They just cancel each other out for some reason. Tu nachs, you get long and high, short and high. So this, in this case, it's going to go land. We can't, it can't land yet, or we'll have to switch to a different verb, which is for something to land. So in this case, we have Tuk-ka-de. Tuk-ach. And then Kuk-kat. Wujjakak.
cook,
That is the verb for a bird or an airplane to land. It is also for a bird to be sitting. It is also for a person to be squatting. And it is also for an octopus to be walking. Because it squat walks. That took a long time to figure out. It has a whole bunch of speakers. It's like, because a student asked me, how's the octopus walk? I was like, I don't know. How am I going to know that? But I started, and everyone's like, I don't know. It's Yana Gut. It doesn't sound right. It was George Davis. He's like, yeah, nishkak. I was like, what? Squat walking. Great. Okay. Maybe good enough now. Maybe break time. Let's see. My clock says 6:46. Why don't we come back in 8 minutes? So 6:54. And I'll try and remember to unpause it. See what happens. Got it. Fool me once. So here's a 9-line thing I asked you to translate 100 years ago. I thought we'd pick it back up since someone reminded me. We'll just go line by line. And you know, like, if you haven't translated from Tlingit to English very much, don't worry about it. We're here to do this stuff together to show you how to engage in this process. Whenever I'm doing translation, I have 3 main things that I go to. 1, Tlingit Verb Dictionary. 2, the notes by Jeff Lear. And then 3 is the dictionary that I've been working on. So I usually have those 3 things open. Let me make sure I've got them all open now. The notes by Jeff Lear, let me show you folks what they look like. You could find them on clinkitlanguage.com. I'll have to revisit to see exactly where that's at. I usually open it in Adobe Acrobat because it's a huge file and it tends to crash when I use like the Mac or the Apple preview program. But maybe some of you folks aren't having that problem. It is, I don't know how many, it's 866 pages, so that's why, of scanned documents. It looks like this. So it does kind of start off, oh, that's not even the beginning. So here's the first page. It's like these handwritten tablet pages, a whole bunch of them. And it's a very, very complete set. And not like every single verb out there, but like so many verbs. I will say, I gotta give Jeff Lear a lot of credit for just going to get the verbs. I do think Naish and Story were uncomfortable with certain verbs like pooping, peeing, anything that had to do with any kind of sexual activity. They just weren't. I don't think they were going to do that. They were missionaries. I don't think that was in their mission. So, but Jeff, he has got them. But it's a language. It's not like everybody needs to talk about this stuff all the time. But when you gotta go, you gotta go. And sometimes, you know, you don't want to switch to English when the mood strikes or whatever's going on. So sometimes you gotta do that kind of stuff. And you can find a lot of those things in here. It is alphabetized by verb root. And then it goes through. And so it can be somewhat intimidating just to go through 860 pages of handwritten notes. In the middle, you do also have, you know, some. It switches at some point. Let's see if I can find it. It's down here. It switches to typewritten notes. And so, and there's a lot of stuff that's coded in here. This tells you there's an object, there's a subject, and that's g conjugation. Or there's a, I don't know if there's a subject there. No, there's a S classifier, and it's intransitive, which means there is no subject. So, however, it's really, if you can't find the verb in the verb dictionary, you go into here. Okay, so let's start moving through this, and we'll translate this, and we'll move back to our Yesh Ḳwáani story. Some of this stuff you might just know. So I'll tell you, that's a noun. That's a verb. That's an adverb. That's a noun. That's a relational, well, it's a relational noun. So, let's see, how do I want to do this? Does anybody want to read it? Or somebody read it. I don't care if you want to or not. I gotta stop asking that way. Guk natu.
Aas Ḳwáani, ke gach gi leach, kedain ya at unatin.
Ganachish. Aas Ḳwáani ke gachtu shaqich. Ketain ya atwune teen. Or tin, sorry. Tin can be teen. They're kind of interchangeable. What have you folks figured out, or what do you recognize in here?
Is Kadane mean well?
Yeah.
Like,
3 people?
Tree people.
Is Wune ya at Wune what happened? Yeah, wait. What happened by means of? Or wait.
Well, so like there is this atwune, which is yes, and so very good job like spotting that. But this is a different. So this is collectively one thing. Ya atwune. It does come from a verb, but it's been changed into a noun.
Isn't Wune respect?
Yes. So this is respect. So this is one noun. So we got well and respect. What should I do? I should fill in the blanks. So there's like a blank, and then, so we've got that. What about tin? Anybody know what tin?
With
With. Okay, so now we got that. So that gets us to the verb. So we're going to go look up qeech and go see what we can find. This underline G. We're going to go to the verb dictionary. That's usually the first place I recommend going. And we've got a little rat gnawing on some cheese. Is there even a sentence about this little rat? I don't see one. There's a dog. Am I the rat? Okay, I'll get off that. We'll go down to the underline G. And here is qeech. So when we get to qeech, we're going to switch back for a second. We're going to say, okay, what else? There's the L classifier. Does anybody know what the gachtu part is doing here?
future.
It's future, and it is we are going to. Every single time, gachtu is we are going to. Okay, so we're going to start to sort of recognize some of these prefix patterns. Once you get to intermediate, we're going to take those things apart, and you're going to predict a whole mess of verbs. You got a whole bunch of verb work coming. But for now, gachtu, we are going to. So we are going to look for an L classifier qeech with nothing in front of it. This is how we start to sort of move back and forth, start to narrow down what verb we might be looking at. And it's right there. It's an L classifier, qeech. There's no ka, there's no ya, there's no sh, there's no sh. It's to fall trees or to clear land. It's good practice whenever we look up a verb to go look it up in English. So I'm going to look up fell, then I'm going to look up clear, just so I get a better understanding of how this verb works. Because whenever I'm doing translation work, I want to figure out what this sentence says, and I want to learn more verbs. You have to just start gobbling them up. So we're going to look for fell and clear. So we'll go scroll down to fell. So here we've got Aas Ḳwáani has ashqitch, or has ashqitcht. They regularly fall big trees. They chop them down. I don't know. Felling a tree is an interesting verb for me in English. As a yayede kuk has a guchshaqich. They are going to fell the trees onto skids. Then we had clear. So then yak deyi would dutliqich. they cleared the beach of rocks for a canoe landing place. I'd probably write yaqdeyi as one word. What's yandilqich? They are clearing, and there's this duh in there in both of these. I think they is just fine for translating. I usually take a different approach because this is the Tlingit fourth person, which means someone does it. So in this case, I would say for translation, the beach was cleared for a landing place. I go right to like the verb happened. Instead of saying they, just to be clear about how the pronouns work in Tlingit and how that could translate to English. And same with right here. I would say bushes are being cleared away. But you got decisions to make as translators. So coming back, now we've got, we are going to fell a tree. I don't know how to use that verb. We're going to fall a tree. We're going to fell a tree. Chop down a tree.
It's fell.
We will fell.
We will fell. Okay. My brain always wants to just move that verb around, but it seems to like to be fell all the time.
Could you just back to what you were saying with the not using they? Is that to differentiate between using the third person? So it's kind of like if you're using they, that's like personal. And then when you use the do, that's more impersonal. So you would say trees are felled.
Well, like in Tlingit, like I think people like to translate it with they, and I don't think that's really the right move when it's the fourth person, because they for me is a third person. And just trying to transition to using they and they all in terms of our pronouns and how they work in Tlingit, just so we're not also genderizing their pronouns, but also just sort of like duh is used to say like it happened. It's almost like not about like who did it. It just says the verb happens. So English does this by kind of just removing the pronoun. So if the verb was to eat, you'd say I ate it, you ate it, they all ate it, whatever, but you say it was eaten. So you just sort of remove the pronoun in English. But in Tlingit, you have a specific pronoun to do that thing. So it's just a different function. So I don't think that they accurately conveys it. I think that's been sort of a standard, but I've been shifting away from that. And now I'll either say it happened or people did it. I'll use either one of those. It depends like how it's being structured. But usually I would say it happened, but if it seems awkward, then I'll say people did it. So I'd say people cleared out this area. That works fine. So as we translate, I think there's these multi-steps that you go through. So we got, okay, here's everything that's in there. Now let's reword it in English so that it sort of makes a little bit more sense, has a little bit more flow. What do you folks think? Three people.
We will cut you down with respect.
Okay. And so like we're doing this collectively. If you keep going with Tlingit, odds are you're going to end up translating stuff. So you'll have a lot of decisions to make in terms of how you do this. And it's less about right and wrong and more about like stylistic decisions and flow and stuff like that. Okay. Okay. Who's going to read this next one?
Hot.
Ah.
Aya ak. Gach tulayech. Ya as ade cake. Gwall ich ie.
Sheesh. Kedeen a yaak gachtutlayech. Ya as a de kek kwatliye. Adverb. Possessive pronoun. Relational noun. Verb, again, future form, we are gonna, gachtu, you see that? Determiner, this, noun. These, I can't get them to highlight at the same time. Ade and yeah. Those are bookmarks on a verb to say the way this verb is happening. That's just as we're shifting the way we're talking about the verb. Ade, yeah. In the middle, kekwatiki. Another verb. Two verbs in here, and then so some of this stuff in translation work is just trying to figure out, like, what are we looking at? What do we got? What are these parts? So I can start to look them up. And the big step is like, is it a verb or not? Because if it's not, you go right in the dictionary, you go look stuff up. So what are the things that we recognize here?
Ḳwáani, I'm sorry, what did you say? The ade and ye means the way the verb is going to be? Did I?
So let's just say we have yesh wugud. Raven walked, right? And I'll capitalize Raven because we're talking about the trickster. If we change this to wugudiyeh, now this is the place where Raven walked. That's what the yeh does at the end of a verb. You'll see in a whole bunch of place names. Anachya andaganya. The yeh is built right in there. However, if you put adeh in front of it, now those function as a pair. It doesn't matter what they do or mean. Put together, now you're saying the way that Raven walks. And now we're talking about the quality of the verb. Like, it was cool the way you talked. It was strange the way they were walking. And that's what that does. So whenever you see ade, yeah, that's usually what it's doing. If it says kesh ade, that's different. But ade and yeah, the way the verb happened.
Nay,
Ah.
where can I find that explanation in writing? You said that several times in the past month, and each time I haven't been able to take notes fast enough to capture it properly, and I need the structure of seeing it in writing on my own.
Okay, I will write something up for that. Gonna sheesh.
Sheesh.
I don't know if it's really been, I'm sure it has been written somewhere, but it's probably buried in some dissertation type of thing. So that's a good point. I'll make a chapter for it. I need to write a chapter anyway. It's been too long.
Nay.
Ah.
It doesn't have to be a chapter. A page would probably suffice, but the way you just broke it out now, with the same sentence and changing it,
Yeah.
how that changes the meaning. Okay.
I'll start with a slideshow. I can do a slideshow fast. Okay. Good point. And sheesh. Okay. So now we've got kadain, which is well. What else have we got? We've probably got it narrowed down to just the verbs and maybe a ya'ak.
Aas is tree.
Tree, yeah. So we have well, blank, blank, this tree, blank, and then we could say the way, blank. Okay, so this we got it narrowed down to our fill in the blanks, right? This is how I like to sort of do translation work, because I'll say, okay, I know this, I know that, I know this. What is this thing? So I want to go look up this noun. So I'm going to look up ya'ak and see what I find. So we're going to go to the dictionary, and we're just going to jump down to, oh, it's on the different screen. I got to move it to the other screen. Can you folks still see it online? You see the dictionary?
Ah.
Let's check. And I moved it, so I just need to make sure. Get over. Okay. Find the edge of it. Okay. So I'm going to go down to the Y's. I'm going to look for ya'ak. So it's going to go Y-I. The period is going to be one of the last things. So I got to go past all this stuff. The Y's. Ya'ak. Let's get it as a high tone. Okay. So here, it's a relational noun needs to belong to something.
Ḳwáani, you're on the T's at
The page,
Oh,
that isn't the page that you're looking at.
and let me share it again. I think, oh, it says it paused. Weird. Okay. I thought that was going to do something because I had that dictionary on my other screen, and when I moved it, it paused it. So I did scroll through the Y. So I got down to the Y's. The glottal stop, underline X, Y, glottal stop. So if you're looking for a glottal stop, it's going to be one of the last letters in the alphabet. So here's ya'ak. It's a relational noun. It needs to belong to another noun. You can say ach ya'ak, yi ya'ak, hastu ya'ak, ya'ak. This is an interesting concept in Tlingit. It could mean a room, a space, or a place, but it's really like a space that is reserved for something. That's how it's really interesting because when I used to look up this word, I used to think, we'll name a whole bunch of rooms in a building using ya'ak. And some of the elders like, no, it doesn't really, itika works better for just like a room. Ya'ak is like, we're saving a space. Sort of like, I think it comes from, there's a verb root to like make room for something, right? And so that's what this is. And so it's like a space reserved for something. It's kind of how it works. It's used quite a bit when they talk about like taking care of our future generations. So now we got this space reserved for it. So this is its. And then Gáchtútlaye.
ख़wáani, just to clarify, what we've been learning about the relational, so that's why it had a long dash, so that's why the has to be there.
That is correct. So when you look in the dictionary, you see a long dash. Oh, that's got to belong to a noun. That needs a noun to relate to. So it's space reserved for. That gets us to Gáchtútlaye. So here's the Gachtu again, right? Popping up. We are going to. There's nothing in front of that. So we're looking for an L classifier, yech verb. So we're going to look up yech, long and low, in the verb dictionary.
Is that true? Didn't you use that before when you were doing something? Was it with verbs and it was build?
Yes, that is what that verb is. So excellent memory. We'll scroll down quickly to see it. Shayech, to build, to make, to construct. So again, we go look at some examples. Go to build, burst, bump, bubble, build. Ye ayausaka, yauklein, achleyechit. They told them, they said it to them so they could build a large boat. That's technically what the definition is. Oh, I don't want to miss anything in the chat. Okay. And then, what else? Was it make? I think it was make was the other one. So, ya sanashech, they are constructing it. The road isn't really in there. Chanik owe achtat ashech. They are just making up stories about me. Just gossip, that is my, about, at, making. They're just making gossip about me. Ooh, that's a good, let's save that for our Tlingit soap opera. Okay, so we've got construct. We bring it back into here. So now we've got reserved for, construct, or let's just say make. This tree the way. Now we're going to look for Ḳwáani. This is also a future verb. Okay, this whole thing is the verb. So we're going to go look up Ḳwáani.
What's the I on the end of it? That's not a possessive, or I forget.
Okay, so that is, let's look up the verb, then we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Again, we had Ḳwáani. So going back, I forgot to sort of point this part out. Ḳwáani. That's a zero classifier. So in the verb dictionary, we're going to look for ya as the classifier. So we're looking for ya and ṭi. Go back to here, ya, ṭi, to break. Usually solid objects. So we're going to go look up break, and break is one of the verbs that has like 20 different verbs for it. Depends on what type of thing it is. We're breaking a stick, we're breaking a compact object, we're breaking a rope, we're breaking eggs. So of course, breaking eggs got its own different kind of verb.
Renee, is it because you didn't see like a ya, like that's how you knew it was a zero classifier? You didn't see any of those, right?
Yeah, so in there you'd see usually for a future, you're gonna see sa, sha, sha, or s, sh, just the letter is in there. So when I'm looking there, and you'll learn how to spot this stuff, and then you're gonna learn exactly how to construct these things. The classifier must be, for the future, the classifier must be minus I every single time. That means the zero classifier will always be a zero. So here's Ḳwáani. That means a third person did it, or it just happened because the third person is unmarked. Depends on the verb. So you can say Ḳwáani. It will be good. Right? Ḳwáani. Going to get sick. So then, but the Ḳwáani is another future, and then so I would expect Ḳwáháa or Ḳwása or Ḳwáhsha, but if I don't see those, then my brain says, oh, that's a zero classifier. And you learn how to spot things in Tlingit that aren't there. So we're looking for the ya, ṭi. Yawat, there's breaking fragile objects, a plate, more eggs. So here's ya, ṭi. To break or to break across, especially solid objects, wood, metals. We're already talking about the tree people, so we're probably getting an idea. Aas Ḵwáani. I broke a stick. Washin wuchi. This one is quite often is stick-like objects. So this one will also be broken bones. So now we're going to get in here and say it will break. So now we got all these pieces, well, or carefully. Kadain could be well or carefully. So well or carefully, it's space reserved for we will make this tree the way it will break. So now we got all these chunks. We got to do some rearranging. What do you folks think?
Is it we will carefully reserve a space to cut the tree down? Or to cut the tree?
Oh yeah, like we will carefully um,
Provide a space. I was just thinking of like honoring it or like this, but maybe that's too much.
something like that, right? Ya Aas Ade. I wonder. Let me go back and I'm gonna make a change here. So let me give you a little history on this project. So sometimes projects come up for you folks to work on because there's other language stuff going on. Someone sends something my way, I'm like, awesome. I'm gonna use this to teach folks because there's really important stuff going on. So I'm gonna change this to ah, and I'm gonna tell you why. And I bet you if I went back to the recording, maybe that's how it is. So when this language work is being done, there's a whole bunch of moving parts. And I just really want to acknowledge all of you folks for taking really big steps this week. Starting to talk about the post positions and how it all fits together. Like I think in beginning Tlingit, you're like taking these little steps and you're doing all this really cool stuff. Then you get to intermediate Tlingit and you start taking some bigger steps. Every now and then we're like, okay, stretch your legs as far as humanly possible and then do it again. And we're taking two big steps this week with one, learning these direction and location terms, and then two, getting into translation work, like getting really into it. So there was this speech that was given in English that's talking about how to be respectful for trees when you're cutting them down. You could really adopt a speech like this to talk about Devil's Club, to talk about harvesting medicines. You could change a couple verbs and you've still got the same concepts. So ade ke would be the way it's going to be broken. But as we put the sentence back together, I bet you it was a ke and that changes it to the place it will break. I think that's what it probably is when the speaker says it. Because a lot of times the speaker says something and they'll say it fast. Like you ask them to translate a sentence that says, we'll prepare a space where you're going to fall. And then he'll probably say, because that's how he talks. I know the speaker who translated this. And then you're like, okay, let me write that. You got to write it down. And pretty soon it's going to be you folks, not just us folks. It's going to also be you folks to be there when a speaker goes into. It's like you're starting a car and it's a stick shift, and they just put it in fifth gear and it just goes flying out of there. Like, you don't even get to go room, room. It just goes right to high speed. So ade and this construction, verb, yeah. Very common for place names. The just likes to be there as that place. That's all it means, is that place. Usually it pops up if we've already talked about it. Shakwe. Yeyeti. Right? So once you name it, you could just switch it to Tlingit loves to do that. Just like you'll name a person and switch to du. You'll name something and you'll switch to So the place where the tree will break. We will carefully make a space where the tree will break. We'll prepare it. So altogether, this is saying we're going to do this with respect, and wherever this tree is going to break and fall, we're going to clear that area. And this is important. We are tree people. There's a whole speech that an elder once made. His name is Ḳukaháa John Martin, and he said, we're Tlingit because we know the names of these trees. It was amazing. And he's talking about how the trees give everything in our culture. They gave us our culture. So when we'd go chop a tree down, we would say this stuff, we would do this stuff. We'd be very careful about how that tree was going to fall. Okay. Let me see. I think I had one other thing, but we're out of time. We're going to pick it up. We got to 2 out of 9 sentences. It's slow working stuff, but that's okay because we're figuring out this process so that we can kind of master it ourselves. When you get into translation work and you really commit to it, your fluency tends to step up pretty fast. Because then you're like, well, what's this thing? How are these things connecting? How is this working? And then it helps you to improve your ability to move from English to Tlingit. Any questions or thoughts before we go? Okay. Okay. Great work, everybody. Great work this week. Just try and mess around with this stuff. You don't have to write any new sentences over the weekend. Take a look at this. I'll put the Raven and Fire story up so you can start working on that as well. And this stuff is going to give you really good practice for your final translation work, which don't worry. Whatever you get done will be good enough. Like if you get like one word done, I'll be like, come on, what have you been doing? But I don't want you to feel like if I don't translate this stuff, I can't pass and then I can't go on and I'll have to quit forever. No way. We're just doing some stuff. We'll do it all together. We'll review it. We'll see what you could come up with on your own, and then we'll collectively do this stuff together. I don't want you to ever feel like you're alone. I don't want you to ever feel like you need to panic. We got time, but we're going to keep taking a few big steps now and then. But we'll focus on this stuff for a couple weeks. Chish. Yevushkach Tustin.
Goodness, cheese.
Cheese.